I am Ivy, and tonight we descend into the 480-acre nightmare of Utah's Sherman Ranch.
In November 1994, a massive creature with hollow, intelligent eyes stood on the Utah dust and calmly took a point-blank rifle blast without spilling a drop of blood. I have turned this file over in my hands 1,000 times, and the silence that follows that gunshot still feels entirely wrong. Terry and Ellen Sherman bought that sprawling 480-acre homestead near Ballard, hoping for a quiet ranch life. They brought their cattle, they brought their children, they brought their hopes for a fresh start under the vast, open western sky. But the soil here remembers things that no deed will ever record. On their very first day moving onto the property, Terry noticed a strange, unnatural stillness. The local wildlife simply vanished. No birds sang in the cottonwoods. The insects fell completely silent. Then came the giant wolf. It walked out from the tree line with an eerie, calculated confidence. It was nearly the size of a steer, its fur matted and coarse, its stance heavy and deliberate. When it grabbed one of their prized calves through the corral fence, Terry did not hesitate. He raised his rifle, he fired dead center into its chest. Any ordinary animal would have dropped. This thing merely stumbled, shook off the impact like a slight morning chill, and trotted away without a hint of fear. They tracked its massive paw prints into the dirt, but the tracks simply stopped in the middle of an open field. No footprints leading away, nothing, just an abrupt end to the trail, as if the creature had dissolved back into the thin desert air. But the wolf was only the herald. Soon, the night skies above the ranch began to fracture. Floating orbs of intense, glowing blue light drifted silently just inches above the pasture grass. They moved with a malicious curiosity, hovering outside bedroom windows, casting long, shivering shadows across the floorboards. The livestock grew frantic, screaming in the dark. The family locked their doors, pulled their children close, and listened to heavy, unseen footsteps padding slowly across their roof. Something was watching them from the darkness, measuring them, and deciding how long to let them stay. And the worst part is not what appeared in the yard that night. It is the lingering question of what was waiting out there in the dark, watching the house, and waiting for the family to finally look back. The blue lights did not just visit the ranch, they began to dismantle the family's sanity piece by piece. Terry and Ellen found themselves trapped in a slow-moving nightmare where every shadow felt deliberate and every creak of the old floorboards sounded like a warning. Strange chemical odors drifted through the hallways when all the doors were bolted shut. The livestock vanished entirely, replaced by mutilated carcasses that appeared overnight with surgical precision, bearing no tracks and no blood in the dust. The invisible hunters were no longer hiding in the distant pastures. They were moving inside the perimeter, whispering in frequencies just below human hearing, leaving behind an oppressive, freezing dread that clung to the skin long after the sun came up. The psychological weight became absolute. Terry stopped sleeping, his eyes fixed on the tree line with a rifle across his knees. Ellen watched the walls warp and ripple as if the very geometry of the farmhouse was shifting to keep them inside. They were living in a relentless siege orchestrated by things that refused to be categorized as mere wildlife or wild imagination. By 1996, after just 2 years of relentless torment, the Sherman family reached their absolute breaking point. They packed their entire lives into a few cardboard boxes in the dead of night, abandoned their investment, and fled the property forever. They left behind a home that had transformed into a cage. If you ask me, looking at the meticulous witness logs and the sheer consistency of the terror, the skeptic's case falls completely apart under the weight of what happened to that family. You cannot explain away collective, sustained physical trauma with mere coincidence or shadows. But I also know the land doesn't let go that easily. So tell me, knowing what you witnessed here, do you think the Shermans were ever truly chased off that land, or were they simply allowed to escape? Leave your theory below. I read every single one. What followed them down that dusty road into the Utah night, I still haven't told anyone. But I will next time.